Hey class, today we're talking about the scientific method in earth science. When we think of the scientific method, we think of the process that we use to figure out some aspect of the way that the world works. This happens all the time. We use it whether we think we're using it or not. For example, if you have something break, you try and figure out why it broke. And you put together a hypothesis and you do some experiments and you figure out what is causing the problem. I experienced this recently when my phone wouldn't charge. I had it plugged into the wall and it wasn't charging. So I took my wife's phone and I took the charger over to my wife's phone, plugged it in, and everything was working fine. Took the charger back over, plugged it in, still wasn't working. So brought my wife's charger phone over to the outlet and the charger where I was at, plugged it in, and it would work. It wouldn't work. And so we realized it was something wrong with the outlet. And so we looked then, okay, is there a switch that goes to this outlet? We found a switch and we tried the switch and that didn't change anything. We realized that there was actually a circuit breaker that was popped. And after we tripped that or flipped it back on, everything worked and my phone was able to work again. That may seem like a silly example, but let me walk you through that process for the scientific method. So first we have a question. Why is my phone not working? That's the first part of the scientific method. What's your question? The second part is to develop a hypothesis. My hypothesis was that it could be the charger that is broken. So I unplugged the charger and took it over to my wife's phone. That's the next part, which is experiment. Do an experiment based to test your hypothesis. And then the next part is observe. We observe the results, measure your results, and figure out what is the end process. Well, her phone did work with the charger plugged in on the other side of the room. So we revised the hypothesis. My phone wasn't charging, so what's going on? And we take my phone, plug her phone into the outlet, and it doesn't work. So it's the outlet. We've kind of narrowed it down. So then we're trying to figure out, why is the outlet not working? Our question has changed. Why is the outlet not working? And we check, okay, maybe there's a switch. And then we try that, doesn't work. Okay, there's a breaker. We try that and it works, and we get it all sorted out. Okay, that's the scientific process. That's what we go through as scientists to try and figure stuff out. We have an idea, we try and figure it out. In earth science, it's a little bit different. Our experiments are done on a smaller scale. So, for example, you might use some very expensive and very special lab equipment to do some geology tests to pressurize and put some heat on some minerals to see how minerals would react under heat and pressure. And that's how new minerals are created, and that's how we determine the process for how different minerals are created and some of their characteristics. So those are some things about the scientific method in earth science. Your assignment for today is to first talk about how you have used the scientific method in your life recently. So it can be an example of troubleshooting something. It could also be, if you want to go back further, I said recently, but if you want to go back further and talk about an experiment you did in high school, that's fine, or middle school, whatever. But I just want you to think about, how have you used the scientific method. The second part of the assignment is that there's going to be a sheet that you have to fill out. So that first part is the discussion board. The second part is a sheet that you need to fill out that talks about the question being, where did this rock come from? And I want you to find a rock in your yard and put it through the process to figure out where did that rock come from. One aspect that's a really important aspect of the scientific method is research. Before we form our hypothesis, we usually try and do some research and figure out what are some of the possible and probable causes to give us an answer to our question. Our research helps us figure things out. So what I want you to do is pick a rock from your yard, do some research. What type of rock is it? Try and figure that out. There are some free apps and app stores that will help you try and do some rock identification. I'm not particular whether you get it right or not. That's not the question. What I want you to do is to just try and go through this process. Figure out where this rock came from. How do you think it got to your yard? Did it get moved there by an animal? did it get put there by a landscaper? What are some of the processes that could have happened to make it get there? And we'll talk about that and understand that as we get farther along. A big part of, sorry for my shaky hand, a big part of the geology process is doing that kind of research and looking at the history of how did this rock get to here. Some of you may have taken the Cajon Pass to get up to Las Vegas. One of the really fascinating things about that is that we would not have an easy access route to get to Las Vegas without the Cajon Pass. But we have that because the San Andreas Fault has split the mountain in half. The San Gabriel Mountains, Rancho Cucamonga Peak, and looking at Mount Baldy in that area is on one side, and San Gorgonio Peak and Big Bear and all that is on the other side. And that's split by the San Andreas Fault. Over time, we have researched and figured out that there is a fault, and that faults are on plates, and tectonic plates move, and that's how we get the theory of how one side of the mountain ended up to the north and one side ended up to the south with a crack in the middle that we call the Cajon Pass. These are the things that scientists have to figure out, and it takes many, many years to try and do the research to make this happen. But I'm excited to work with you through this class and talk about some of these interesting examples that we're going to talk about and explore to understand how we have used the scientific method to figure out how volcanoes work and how earthquakes work and how tectonic plates work and how the climate works and how we have different regions of the globe. It's fascinating stuff to me. I really love it. Anyways, talk to you soon.